And welcome today to webinar 2 of a 3-part series of the Sandcast Advisory Services program, transforming your firm and clients into the future. The Sage Accountant Network's Client Advisory Services programs provide you with higher value services to your clients by creating a clear, concise strategy for increasing their value and profitability. And along that line, today's webinar is all about packaging and pricing your menu of services, rules of pricing and pricing strategy. We've got Gary Boomer and Ed Kless on the call today. Gary, the founder of Boomer Consulting, who we've partnered with to bring this program together with you. He's an Accounting Today top 100 most influential inside public accounting top consultant year over year, CPA practice advisor, top 25 thought leader, former member of the AICPA Council, and completely passionate about your success and future readiness as an accountant. Also on the call, we do have our pricing expert, Ed Kless, who is the host of the Soul of Enterprise radio show and podcast, along with Ron Baker, director of Sage Accountant Solutions. Yes, he's entertaining, and he's an expert in pricing and packaging, as I said. So you're going to get a lot out of today's session. So without further ado, take it over, Gary and Ed.
Well, thank you very much, Thomas. And of course, in 15, 20 minutes, we can't really cover this topic in a lot of depth, but we want to give you some feel for what the Sage Accountant Network program is all about. And I'm thrilled to have Ed here with me because he has a great way of explaining pricing and pricing theory. But the first question we've got to answer is, what are you going to price and how are you going to package those services? So I'm just giving you a sample menu of different types of services in an accounting firm. And this is for illustrative purposes only. You will see that we have transactional services in level 1. Those are things like bookkeeping, sales tax, property tax. In level 2 would be more compliance. And that could be state and local tax. It could be doing cash flow budgets. Level 3, advisory, strategic planning. Level 4, consulting, purchase of a new business, sale of a business, etc. And some of these services can move among levels. So don't be too caught up with this. I just point out that most firms don't have anything like this where they're trying to bundle services. It's offered more in silos and separate pricing. And think of going into a spa, and if a spa didn't have packages, how they would really minimize their impact on their clients as well as their service income. So that's the reason we feel you need a menu, and our program will help you define that menu, help you define your value proposition for the menu. So this is just one of the first steps. And as I said, this is for illustration. And we have actually some examples of brochures and things like that that you might use. So now I want to move over to pricing and ask Ed to comment. We're only going to show you 6 rules here. We call it a baker's dozen because of Ron Baker wrote the book, Pricing on Purpose. And he had 12 rules in there, I believe, and we've actually added the 13th. I think I call it Boomer's rule, and it's something to the effect that not all people are equal when it comes to pricing capabilities, yet we let most partners in firms price their own services, and that may be one of the biggest errors that we could ever have. So Ed, take it from here and talk a little bit about the rules of pricing.
Yeah, sure. And just to leverage off that last one, it's funny because that one constantly comes up in the work that we do, Gary, and people think that because they own the book of business, they own the price, but it's weird. And the analogy I always use as, well, the highest the highest paid, most technical person on an airline is the pilot, and they don't set your price because they don't have a core competency in it, right? It's not their job. And why do we think that people who have a high level of technical expertise, who have worked with a customer for so long, why do we think that somehow they, in some way, should have the insight to be able to be the best pricer? So, but let's talk about a couple of these, this baker's half dozen, so to speak. And the first is this notion of retaining the leverage, pricing before doing the work. Here's the thing: when we bill by the hour, we always bill in arrears. And when do you have the price leverage? That's because I think as I think Mahan Khalsa said in one of his great books, he said, a service delivered is worth less than a service that's needed. Or said the opposite way, a service that's needed is more valuable than a service that's been delivered. So we have to set the price when we have the best pricing leverage, which is when that's up front. This one, number two, is really fascinating because we see so many people who do this nowadays. You don't need a Harvard MBA to cut your price by 10%, right? That's I don't need anybody who to be able to say, yeah, okay, we can get more business if we cut our price by 10%. Yeah, no kidding, right?
Most people don't even need a calculator.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's just the basic law of supply and demand. If I cut my price, I'm going to sell more. Thanks, genius. What I want to know is, what is it that I can do to extract 10, 20, 50% more value or create more value for this customer, right? And then get a higher price because we're creating more value. And I think that's the biggest thing that people mistake, is this notion that price is a function of your cost. It's not. Price is a function primarily of the value that you've created in the customer's organization. So price derives from value, not cost. In fact, the best way to think about it is that the price that you get for something justifies the future expenditure of cost, right? And I think that's really important to think that pricing is the thing that does that. Okay. I love this. The pricing quicker results in lower pricing. We're going to talk in this program a lot about efficiency in certain cases, and I'm not against efficiency per se, but I will say there's one area that I in particular want you to be completely inefficient, and that is in setting your price. I do not want you to think about how can we most efficiently set this price ever. I never want you to think about that. Because the more efficient you get at setting a price, the less effective it will be. And what we want you to do is to spend time, and as Gary says here, deliberate over pricing. It should be something that you agonize over, not something that's just an afterthought. Low prices develop this low respect. I mean, if you think about this, we are tempted by higher prices. Right? When we hear about the top level of a particular, let's say a Disney cruise, I wonder what first class is like, right? We're tempted by understanding what that high price gets us, what kind of different experience it does. Well, the same thing is said for low price, and in some cases, and I think this is the biggest, more mistakes are made in low pricing, in pricing things lower than they should be, than in pricing too high, right? And this is ironic that people who do numbers for a living, that this should be the case, but it definitely is. The last two, price at the top of the organization. The higher you go in an organization, the less price sensitive people would be. Price sensitivity is a very complicated matrix to try to understand what those factors are that affect people's price sensitivity. But for the most part, a good rule of thumb is that the higher you go in the organization, the less price sensitive people are going to be. And then I love this last one, is that it's about confidence and courage to develop prices for your products are truly required, because if you don't have this confidence, if you don't have a confidence in what you are worth, your customers certainly are not going to do this. And one of the great ironies, I think, is that professionals across the board, across the spectrum, not just accounting professionals, but believe it or not, lawyers and engineers and marketing people, there's actually a self-esteem issue that affects all of us, and we have to get past that.
Well, I did that.
Yeah, Gary, go ahead and introduce this, and I'll comment on this. So go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I hit that a little bit before I intended to. It wasn't to cut you off, but we could talk about pricing the entire segment here, but I want to move on to packaging. And I will say that we have tools built into the module on pricing, packaging, checklists, questionnaires, things like that, that will help you and educate you how to do it more precisely and what questions you need to ask, as Ed said. But as you package these services, you know, small, medium, and large, when you go to a theater, certainly, or McDonald's, you deal with that today. And I think we've got an expert here to tell us the pricing psychology, because people do want options in their pricing. So Ed, I'm going to turn this back over to you and let you talk through this.
Yeah, this is probably one of the three greatest things that I've learned in business. And what's so surprising about it is that it is fairly ubiquitous, with the exception of professional firms, right? This notion that we offer our customers choices for things. We as human beings like choice. We like to be, when we're given choices. This goes all the way back to from the time that we're toddlers, and instead of being told that we have to leave the playground, it's a much better effective parenting technique to say, do you want to leave now or in 10 minutes? And have the kids say 10 minutes, because they think they're part of the choice process. So we as human beings love to be able to have choices. And one of the mistakes that professional organizations have made for years is not providing this choice to their customers. Instead, what they have tended to do, which is really one of the worst pricing strategies, is price along a continuum, giving them a range, right? It's going to be from here to here. Well, think of how insane that is. Would you ever want to purchase, I don't know, a gallon of milk where the price was given to you in a range? Well, it's going to be between $3 and $5 for this milk. What do you mean between 3 and 5? Well, we have to get the bill from the dairy, the truckers. They have to decide on what their price was to haul this. We had the place where it was homogenized, and by the way, if you want pasteurization as well, that's a separate thing. So we've got to worry about that. We would never look to buy milk that way. But yet we expect our customers to be able to say, well, it's going to be the range. And by the way, they think it's going to be the low. We think it's going to be the high, plus 10% for change requests. And we wonder why then we end up in an adversarial relationship with the same.
But I like chocolate milk.
Yeah, exactly. And there's none of those things factor in there. So offering choice is one of the most powerful things that you can do as an organization, because it gives the control back to the customer. It gives them the ability to evaluate this. And there's one thing that this does that, man, is just one of the most insightful things I ever heard. And that is, when you're given a choice of three things, our brains automatically key into which one of these should I choose, rather than should I do this at all. And that is a huge psychological step, a huge hurdle to get over when we're starting to think, oh, which one of these is the best deal? Which one do I want to do? And we begin to then compete really with ourselves over this concept of value. And this is what I love about this notion of packaging using three levels.
Because in consulting, the biggest competitor is really the client themselves of not doing anything.
Right, absolutely. So we get past that when we put this into practice. So
well, let's take it to the next level, Ed.
Yeah.
This one you're really good at. Talk to us.
Oh, the black. I'm sorry. There was. I was like, what's changed? Oh, yes, the black, the top. Yeah. So this is interesting because one of the things that I think that we've missed for years is this notion that we do have these extraordinarily high valuable customers, and maybe it's the top 2% or 1%, or it could be 5 or 10%, depends on the firm, right? But one of the things that we miss is our ability to create a customized solution for those that value us the most. And of course, the great example of this, and why I like calling this Black, is the American Express Black Card, which you cannot apply for. You can only be invited into. And that's the concept that I want to plant with you right now, is that there's a certain segment of your current customer base that really values what you do. And I can guarantee you, you are not capturing as much of the value that you create for them. In fact, they think your price is far, far too low, right? And what we can do is if we can help you craft this notion of a Black Card option for them that is concierge, that is specific to them, that you can extract a much higher price, and simultaneously, this is the big and, they will be happier because of it, because they're going to recognize, oh, we're getting treated more special.
Great explanation. And I know from having been in practice in a CPA firm for almost 20 years, and then now in the consulting business, this certainly is true. And that top 2%, they really don't want to be billed the same as the rest of the clients. They want to be special.
Yeah. Yep. It's about time. That's what I hear a lot of them say. It's about time you started treating me like this.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, we're just about out of time for this segment, but Thomas, what questions do you have that we might quickly answer?
Yeah, there's a couple that have come in that are interesting, and this one is a bit more holistic. It says, I'm concerned about the cost benefit of adding extra offerings. Can you provide some additional insight on that?
Well, I think the insight there is it's always a matter of risk. And as we said in the first segment that we did today, it's the clients really don't know what they want. So there is some risk, there's risk management. But I would ask you a question in answer to your question. What's the risk if you don't do it?
Yeah.
I think the risk is higher that you either lose that client or they become more difficult to deal with. They are price resistive. And so I don't think you have a lot of choice here, but our program will help you make those decisions based upon what you believe your clients need and ways to find out what they really want. And I think the wants and needs are certainly important in this.
Perfect. Now, there is one other question on this topic, and person says, ultimately, we're working on getting away from hourly billing and more into value pricing. Is it basically the client or me that sets the value? Who creates the value?
Let me take this one, Gary.
Yeah, I knew you wanted that one.
Yeah, I can't help myself. This is a really great, insightful question. And here's the thing: it is your price is based on the customer's perception of value, not yours. So it's important that what we get great at, capital G, capital R, capital 8, what we get great at is asking the right questions to have the customer come up with what their perceived value is. We call it the value conversation, or I call it the value conversation. And we have to get so good at that the customer comes to us and they explain to us what the value is. And yes, it can be done. But yes, it's super hard. But yes, it is the value is in the eyes of the customer. Value, like beauty, is in the eyes of the customer.
I don't know how I can top that, Ed, other than saying part of the program is learning how value pricing is just the opposite of the Karl Marx theory on pricing that most firms are using today.
Amen.
Well, yeah, and certainly, we appreciate it. This I can tell you that in all the feedback we're getting from accountants is packaging and pricing is the one that they need to embrace the most and understand. And I think today was a really great start in that direction.
Well, thank you, Thomas, and thanks everyone for attending. And feel free to look at our other webinars out there and invite your friends and co-workers to take a look, because I think they'll find a lot of benefit to the webinars as well as to the program.